It's time for Coffee on the Coast Book Banter. Welcome to Coffee on the Coast. I'm your host today, Tina Prigge. Delighted to be joined once again. It's like one of my favorite days of the month when Therese Tina is here from the award-winning Manitowoc Public Library, and we are going to banter about some book recommendations. Therese, so good to see you.
You too. You too.
I have to tell you, I'm really excited because one of the books on your recommendation list is a book that I've previously read and listened to, which I loved. So I'm super excited to share that. But let's start with this book called Fuzz, because this seems really interesting and a pretty cool concept. Can you tell us more about this one?
It is. Mary Roach, the author. This newest one is about kind of animals, and then there is breaking and entering and eating and things like that. It's just kind of animals doing what they naturally will when they get in places, but it is so interesting. I've read only one of her books completely and, kind of gone over others when I've had time. But she has written, I want to say, at least 6 others that all have this same kind of feel. She takes on a pretty serious scientific topic and really makes it interesting, but also really fun to read. And
so that's a cool combination, science and
is.
Fun. I like that.
It is. And so the one that I did read was called Stiff, and it's the curious lives of human cadavers. And you learn an awful lot about what happens with us after we're gone, so to speak. But she just makes it really interesting. It's not, the dry science book, but you still get so much out of it. And
it's so interesting.
Yeah. So Fuzz sounds really good. And she actually, if you're aware of Book Page that we get that lists books coming out, it's also online, but she made the cover. I don't know if you can see that there. She made the cover this month for it. And it lists all of her books inside. So there's a nice article about her in here too. So
yeah, it's interesting. When I read a little blurb about her, and it sounds like she really delves into a scientific topic, does research, travels, studies it, explores it, talks about it, and then writes an interesting book. And like this graphic shows, her books, at least some of them, have this one-word title. So like we're talking about Fuzz, but there's also Bonk and Grunt, and like you said, you read Stiff. So I've never read anything by her before, but I'm super excited to check this book out.
She is really worthwhile reading. Definitely Fuzz I haven't read yet since it's just coming out, but I think it's going to be a good one.
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. I'm looking forward to checking that one out. So let's move next to this graphic. This shows 2 more books. So the book that I've previously read is called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was such a unique concept. Tell us from your perspective.
It is. And I know we had one staff member that's really been recommending it to others. And I think easiest is somewhere out beyond the universe, there is a library with an infinite number of books. Each one is a different life that you could or could have led. And so if you could go and try them, would you pick other than the one you are living? Nora Seed is the main character, and she finds herself in this situation. And it's very interesting, the things that she goes through, and you get a taste of some of the lives. Some are just mentioned kind of in a little list because there are just too many that she tries to really, you'd have a huge book, but it was very interesting.
Again, a really fresh concept. Yeah. And, it was interesting because when she would choose a book off of the Midnight Library shelf, right, and start reading, all of a sudden she's transported into that life, kind of like a parallel existence, a sort of what if she had made a different choice. But it's interesting because she will assume her form, but have none of the backstory of that life. So all of a sudden she's got to look at what's in her hands, look at the environment around her, try to figure out, who am I? What am I going to say? What is my relationship to the guy that's approaching me? It was really interesting.
And what I really liked about it too is she would be put in with people she knew, but they were different somehow. That, if you, with reading it, if you got that feel like this guy that she really liked is suddenly, I'm not sure what I saw in him. And
Right.
then she also finds things that her big thing was regrets that she had in her life, and would she change them? Would that have given her a better life? And so there's a lot of that happens along the way too. So, and
Yeah.
the lady who helps her with these books and that midnight library is kind of interesting too. We always wondered, the couple staff that have talked about it, if there's some secret meaning there with this lady who is helping her, a little bit more than, because I believe her name is Miss Elm, and the main character's name is Nora Seed. And it's kind of, are they both supposed to be nature elements of, or is it just a coincidence that that's the names that they have?
Oh,
So
you librarians go deep.
there
That's
is,
awesome.
there's a lot of stuff going on in this book, and it was very good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, the big news is I recommended it to Jason, and Jason just confirmed that he's actually starting to listen to the audiobook today. So.
Oh, nice. Then you'll get more to talk about.
Viewers, if you check out any of these great book recommendations, definitely let us know your feedback. We'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah.
So then tell us, I've not heard about this one, Where the Grass is Green and the Girls Are Pretty by Lauren Weisberger.
This, I think, out of all of the books that I'm recommending, was the kind of the easiest read. It had a very easy flow to it, and the characters were good. It just drew me in really fast. But there are two sisters, one named Peyton. She is a TV anchor on a morning show and has husband and one daughter. And then there's her sister Sky, who is really, she is well to do enough, but in a different way. And she's very down to earth, totally different if you had put the two of them together, style wise, home wise. You wouldn't think they were sisters probably. But the big thing here is that Peyton, the first mom, her daughter Max is ready to go off to college and applying to colleges. And just like in the news, it's parents who have paid for colleges illegally to get their kids in. And so Peyton has read this as a news anchor, and then it turns out that it happens in her own family. And in the meantime, her sister, who is the real down-to-earth one, has her own secret that she is not telling her husband or her sister. And hers is that even though she's very, down-to-earth kind of person, has a shopping problem. And so, which may not seem so big either until you really get into it. And so the book there's, of course, a lot of family drama because of what happens, and people losing jobs over things, and how the daughters, each Sky also has a daughter, but not in the same situation. And so it was very good. I mean, you might say, oh, that's boring. It's, what's happening in the news, but the book itself was really good to read. The relationships in here were very good.
Was it written after the whole college scandal came out in the news?
It's a current book. It's a new book yet. So I'm sure they maybe based it, that the author maybe took some of that and then took her own story out of it. But
nice. Well, for any viewers who aren't already intrigued by that description, I found this little snippet of explanation. Let's see if I can pull this up. So, it talks about how it's the New York Times bestseller, Good Morning America
Mm-hmm.
buzz pick, all of that. But read in italics at the bottom, it says,
Yep.
it goes down like an ice cold guilty pleasure on a hot beach reading day.
Yep. It was one of the easiest reads I've had lately. That you can pick it up anytime, you know where you are. It's not overly complicated, but it's still enough that, you know, it's a good hefty read without being
Nice.
hefty feeling. Yeah.
And how does it leave you? Does it leave you with a good feeling too? Is it like,
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it does.
I love books like that. I did listen to a book you had recommended on a previous show. It was called Later by Stephen King.
Oh yeah.
Really, really well written. I mean, Stephen King
Hmm.
is just a master. And
Yes.
fortunately, like you assured me, it wasn't a horror. You know, it wasn't a
Right.
Stephen King horror, but it has such an unexpected twist at the end. I was like, what? So,
He is good at that.
all right. So I think then that this next recommendation, from what I read, sounds like the complete opposite of the book you just described. Let's talk about The Comfort of Monsters by
Okay.
Willa C. Richards.
The Comfort of Monsters is a big book. It has um, a definite, I don't want to say depressing feel, but it's a very heavy feel to it. It takes place currently, but it goes back to incidents that happened 30 years ago, as they call it, the Dahmer Summer. And it's set in the Milwaukee area, and it has to do with two sisters, and one of them disappears that summer, along with all the things that were happening in Milwaukee. With they also have a gay friend, and he has, so there's a lot of that involved, where um, there was a lot of gay bashing and real fear being a person that didn't fit mainstream at the time. Um, so that plays a part of it. But with the people disappearing, kind of the tagline with this story was that this girl just kind of was lost in the shuffle of all the other things that were happening at that time. And even though they went to the police, it seemed like their biggest thing to say was no body, no crime, because she disappeared. It's like they looked for so long and then didn't anymore. So a lot of this has to do with the two girls, their mom. Their mom actually 30 years later hires a psychic to try and help them find her. So it talks about the different things that they did trying to find her. And I think just years that went by, not that they forgot about her, but that they would kind of try and revive a, a search for her. So
This one sounds really depressing, Therese.
it's a heavier book, definitely. Yeah.
Now, does
And
it say that this is a novel? So is
it
this
is,
like an imagined story that was happening, or is
they
this based
just,
on
right,
real events?
they put it in a true setting, you know, Milwaukee, 1991, the Dahmer summer, they put it there, but um, add their own, just, I should say, sure, yeah, her own take on things, and just the way, I guess when you have something that big happening, and also say 30 years ago, things have changed a lot too. With if you're out trying to find somebody, the
Right.
you know, the
Forensics and
different
all of
things
that.
that you have at your fingers to try and find people. But so, but it does have to do with some of the other characters, brother, a boyfriend, and a boyfriend that was looked like pretty rough on her sister, but you're wondering if he did something or did she get caught up. It seemed it was kind of like the hippie feel of people crashing here and there, and just, you know, so that was involved too. Like, have you talked to this person in weeks or not? And there's a lot going on in the book. And it was a good book though. It's the first novel by this author. And like I said, it's a pretty big project that she took on there.
And now it's
And one
interesting
of the
because it's
yeah,
the comfort of monsters. But like
yeah,
what you were describing, nothing about that story seems
right.
to relate to the word
It's
comfort.
more it's
So,
mentioned at least once in there the way they took it. So as you'll read, you'll find that out.
okay.
But part of it was that they said, how do our memories help or hurt in a case like this when you're looking so far back? Um, the one the one character, Peg, says, I don't know if I'm really remembering what I should be remembering anymore at this point when you're still trying to find someone. So there's a lot to absorb of what she goes through these years.
Interesting. I don't know if
Hmm.
I can commit to reading this one, but you do make
Yeah,
it sound very interesting. But
yeah,
oh,
yeah. I can't say it's on my, like top 10 favorites, but I thought it was a worthwhile read.
interesting. Okay, well, what about this other book that's on here? It's called The Stranger Behind You by Carol Goodman.
Okay. The Stranger Behind You. I am 3/4 of the way through, so I don't know who has done what at this point. It is, but it's very good. There's two main characters. Joan is a young reporter. She gets a big story, and with the whole Me Too movement, um, she brings down a well-known newspaper tycoon. Well, his wife. Oh, but also the other thing, which they tell you right away, the same night that this story comes out, she is brutally attacked going into her apartment and doesn't know who did it. So she moves to a place that should be safer. It's actually called the Refuge. The doorman at the gate, and just super, super, you know, the locks, the security, the cameras, everything that you can have there, as far as she knows. And then there is the wife of the man that she took down. And so now, without saying how or why, it lists it this way: she is now newly widowed, and she is revengeful at this young reporter. And she manages to get into her life in ways that we're all sure people can do now. But so we've got that. And then in the middle of all of this mix is a little 94-year-old lady named Lillian, who has lived in this refuge for many years. And she's playing some part there, and we don't quite know how she might know something of these people, or that her part there is going to play a part. I'm waiting. Like I said, I've got a quarter of the book left to finish, and so I'm anxious to see what happens with it.
And so, is it a page turner? Is it someone
It
that you
is. I
want to
think
keep?
it keeps you moving, and the author actually is an American professor. She's written quite a few books before this one. That I can't say I've read any of hers, but I am enjoying this one.
Interesting. I think that this is a quote about it. Nope, nope, nope. That must be about Fuzz. Never mind.
If all else
No,
fails, we go back to Fuzz.
jaywalking moose. That's so funny. Well, that one sounds pretty interesting. And so you
Yes.
still don't know how it wraps up because you're three
No, I
quarters of the way
don't.
through.
I'm seeing things happen, but there's another person in there that the reporter worked with, and he's seeming untrustworthy, so I don't know what part he's going to play either. So we'll see when this all ties up yet.
Interesting. Wow,
Yes.
what an interesting selection that you shared with us today. I'm just going to go through them again. So we talked about Fuzz by Mary Roach. Then we talked about The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and
Mhm.
Where the Grass is Green and the Girls Are Pretty by Lauren Weisberger. And then we got way more serious with The Comfort of Monsters by Willa C. Richards and The Stranger Behind You by Carol Goodman. Do any of these keep you up at night when you read them?
Well, it just depends. Some days I just fall asleep no matter what I'm reading. So, but there are others that, yes, I could read through half the night. I have to think with these. The Stranger Behind You has kept me up. I've just started reading that one a few days ago. So I have done some late night reading with this one now. And Where the Grass is Greener, because it was such an easy, it just kept flowing. It had no, like, when you feel like you're straining to get through it and remember the characters and, that it's gotten to that point, that one had none of that. It just was really a great read.
Awesome.
So,
well, Therese, thanks again for the great recommendations. I'm looking forward to checking them out. Viewers would love to know what you're reading and what you think about any of the recommendations that Therese has made. And Therese, we will look forward to seeing you next time on Coffee on the Coast.
You too. Take care.
Take care.